Friendship is supposed to be a safe place, a bond built on love, trust, and shared memories. But what happens when that bond turns fatal? What happens when your best friend becomes your worst enemy? In 2006, the quiet community of East St. Louis, Illinois was rocked by a horrifying crime. A betrayal so gruesome, so unthinkable, that it left the entire nation stunned. Jimella Tunstall was 23 years old, a mother of 3 with a baby on the way. Her life was just beginning. But someone she trusted, someone she loved like family, took everything from her in one of the most chilling and heartbreaking cases in modern true crime history. This is the story of Jimella Tunstall and Tiffany Hall, 2 childhood friends raised side by side, until one of them snapped. Stay with us as we unravel how a bond formed in youth ended in bloodshed. Jimella Tunstall and Tiffany Hall were born and raised in East St. Louis, Illinois, a city with deep roots, proud families, but no shortage of hardship. Poverty, violence, and broken systems were part of the backdrop of their childhoods. But despite the struggles, Jimella and Tiffany found something precious: each other. From the moment they met as young girls, they were inseparable. Neighbors, classmates, and friends. They shared clothes, secrets, and dreams. They talked about one day getting out of the neighborhood, making something of themselves, and raising families of their own. Jimella was the gentle soul. She had a natural maternal instinct from a young age. Quiet, observant, and kind-hearted, she was the kind of person who stayed out of trouble, stayed loyal to her friends, and took on responsibility with grace. At 16, Jimella had her first child, and by her early 20s, Jimella was a devoted mother to 3 beautiful children: Damon, age 7, Ivan, age 2, and a baby girl named Janella, age 1. She was also pregnant with her 4th child, a pregnancy she was excited about despite the challenges. Tiffany Hall, in contrast, had a more turbulent path. Though she had the same upbringing, Tiffany often found herself at odds with school, with authority, and with her own mental health. Teachers and family members noticed her mood swings, her unpredictability. At 14, Tiffany became a juvenile delinquent for kicking her mother. She didn't follow her mother's rules, stayed out all night, and didn't attend school until she would eventually drop out. Her mother once stated that she tried to burn down her house. But Jimella never judged her. She stood by her side through every heartbreak, every mistake. Even as they entered adulthood and their lives began to diverge, Jimella focusing on motherhood and Tiffany drifting, their bond remained. At least that's what Jimella believed. The cracks in Tiffany's emotional stability were growing deeper. After having her first child at 16 and her second a year later, Tiffany would eventually lose both her daughters to the state after signs of abuse were found. Her mother stated that she saw the baby in Tiffany's arms looking like a rag doll, completely limp. The baby would suffer from long-term injuries at the hands of her mother. When the child turned 7, she still wore diapers and couldn't even speak. The kids would eventually be returned back to Tiffany due to the fact the state forgot to file abuse charges. Then Department of Child Service determined that Tiffany was no longer a threat. That same year, Tiffany would be charged with possession of a stolen credit card. In 2006, Tiffany experienced a miscarriage, a devastating event that, according to friends and family, deeply affected her. But instead of coping with grief, Tiffany began pretending that she was still pregnant. She told people around her, including her boyfriend, that she was expecting a baby. She even faked doctor visits. She prepared for a child who didn't exist. The lie began consuming her life. But with every passing week, the pressure mounted. Eventually, Tiffany would need to produce a baby, or be exposed. And that's when her plan turned deadly. She knew Jimella was pregnant. She knew she was due any day. And she knew that no one would suspect her. After all, she was the best friend. What no one realized was that Tiffany had made a decision to take Jimella's unborn child by force. On the other hand, at 23, Jimella was much more responsible and mostly stayed to herself. She was a protective mother who wouldn't even let her kids play outside in the housing projects she lived in, and when she did, she would always sit outside on the porch watching them closely. She would also wake her oldest child to the bus stop every morning, neighbors stated. In 2006, Jimella was pregnant with her 4th child, who she was excited to meet. On the evening of September 15, 2006, Tiffany invited Jimella over to her apartment. She told her they'd celebrate her birthday together, a simple, friendly hangout. Jimella, being the friend she always was, came without hesitation. She trusted Tiffany. What happened next is almost too horrific to put into words. While inside the apartment, Tiffany attacked Jimella. She struck her repeatedly in the head with a table leg, rendering her unconscious. But the violence didn't stop there. Using a pair of household scissors, Tiffany cut Jimella open, performing a crude, untrained cesarean section. It's unclear whether Jimella was still alive during the procedure, but the horror is unspeakable either way. Tiffany removed the unborn baby girl from Jimella's body and left her to die. Unfortunately, the child wouldn't survive the incident. Tiffany would then call 911, stating that she just gave birth to a stillborn child. But once she arrived to the hospital, she wouldn't allow doctors to examine her, which raised suspicion. Tiffany would be released from the hospital, and the baby moved to the morgue where a cause of death couldn't be determined. But Tiffany's nightmare wasn't over. Jimella's family began asking questions. Where was she? Why wasn't she answering her phone? Why hadn't anyone seen the kids? So Tiffany did something even more horrifying. She returned to Jimella's home, where her 3 children were staying, and drowned them, one by one, in the bathtub. 7-year-old Demond, 2-year-old Ivan, and 1-year-old Javion, each murdered in cold blood. She then placed their tiny bodies in the washer and dryer units in the home. Her motive was simple: eliminate all evidence. She believed if the children were gone, they couldn't identify her or connect her to Jimella's disappearance. It was the ultimate betrayal, a massacre of an entire family, committed by someone who had once sat at their dinner table, held their hands, and smiled in their faces. Tiffany's story quickly began to fall apart. Hospital staff were suspicious. The baby had no medical records. Tiffany had no proof of delivery, and her own mother started questioning inconsistencies in her story. Feeling the pressure, Tiffany eventually walked into a police station and gave a partial confession. She claimed that she'd found Jimella's baby and didn't know what to do. But police weren't buying it. They searched her apartment and found Jimella's body. When they followed up at Jimella's home, they uncovered the most horrifying scene imaginable: the bodies of all 3 children hidden in the laundry units. Tiffany was arrested immediately and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. In 2008, Tiffany Hall pled guilty to all 4 murders. In exchange for avoiding the death penalty, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. No amount of justice could bring back the 4 lives she took. The Tunstall family was left shattered. A mother, 3 children, and an unborn baby gone forever. To this day, the case of Jimella Tunstall and Tiffany Hall is used as a chilling reminder that not all evil hides in the shadows. Sometimes it lives in plain sight, behind a familiar smile, a warm embrace, or a voice that once said, "I love you." This is the ultimate betrayal, the kind that leaves a community asking, how could someone do this? Jimella was a devoted mother, a loyal friend, and a young woman who deserved to live, love, and raise her children in peace. Her story, and the tragedy that followed, must never be forgotten. If you found this story powerful, haunting, or heartbreaking, please consider liking the video, subscribing for more true crime content, and sharing this video so that the memory of Jimella, Demond, Ivan, Javion, and her unborn child continues to live on. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, sometimes, the people you trust the most are the ones you should fear the most.